I know self-publishing's not for everyone. Nothing is. But if you've considered self-publishing for even a minute, listen up, because I'm betting I know what's holding you back from exploring it further or getting started. Number one, you think the self-publishing process is a lot harder than it actually is. And number two, you're understandably afraid of doing it, air quote, wrong. So I've created a new free resource for you. It's called the Self-Publishing Starter Kit, and you can get instant access to it by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting publishaprofitablebook.com/self-publishing 101. In this free training, you'll discover the exact 4 steps to focus on and mistakes to avoid so you can publish an incredible book that's indistinguishable in quality from a New York Times bestseller without overthinking, overguessing, or overspending in areas that won't make a difference. Again, visit publishaprofitablebook.com/self-publishing 101 to get instant access. Welcome to the Write the Damn Book Already podcast. My name is Elizabeth Lyons. I'm a 6-time author and book editor, and I help people write and publish powerful, thought-provoking, wildly entertaining books without any more overthinking, second-guessing, or overwhelm than absolutely necessary. Because let's face it, some overthinking, second-guessing, and overwhelm is going to come with the territory if you're anything like me. I believe that story and shared perspective are 2 of the most potent ways we connect with one another, and that your story, perspective, and insights are destined to become someone else's favorite resource or pastime. For more book writing and publishing tips and solutions, and plenty of free and low-cost resources, visit publishaprofitablebook.com. And for recommendations of fabulous books you've possibly never heard of, book writing inspiration, and the occasional meme so relatable you'll wonder if it was created with you in mind, follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth Lyons Author. Well, folks, rule number 5 in my 3rd book, appropriately titled, given the last few days, You Cannot Be Serious, is you've never seen it all. And I tell people in the book and in life, just don't ever say, oh my gosh, I've now seen it all. Because if you do that, the universe will absolutely prove you to be wrong and show you something that you not only have never seen, but never thought you would see. So I had a crazy experience about a week and a half ago, and I'm not really going to detail it because that's not the important thing. If you know, you know. But there are a lot of really good lessons I've taken from this for authors and creative people in general, and that's what I want to share for you. In short, and this might be the number one lesson. As creative people, as human beings, it's so important to remember in this day and age that what we share on social media, once we share it, we don't have control over it, where it goes, how it's interpreted, all those sorts of things. And to make a long story extremely short, I post very rarely in Threads, but a little more recently. And I posted something that was definitely for what I would consider my audience, which is people who are writing nonfiction, specifically personal growth, self-development, spirituality, inspiration, motivation, happiness, that sort of thing, and memoir. And it was picked up by someone who does not write in that genre, a very, very well-known author who does not write in that genre, and it was reposted to that author's audience. And it was essentially, the analogy I can give you is, if you are someone who is in the nutrition space and you are a natural wellness person, so let's say that you espouse juicing, and you regularly post to your people about the benefits of juicing, and they follow you because they agree or want to learn more about juicing or are open-minded about juicing, whatever the case may be. And then someone who's very well known in the medical, like Western medicine community, who does not believe in juicing, takes a post that you made about juicing and reposts it to their community, basically saying this person, like, this isn't true. And then that community, which you did not even try to engage in conversation, now all of a sudden they're engaged in the conversation, and not in a good way. Because not knowing you or anything about you, they assume that you're speaking about Western medicine. So now they're reposting you and saying this person's an idiot, this person's a fraud, all those sorts of things, which in that space, it's understandable that you would be seen that way, or that would be their response to you, because that's not your audience. So that's essentially what happened. And the most unfortunate part of it was that you can't control. So to say I could have controlled it or I could have gotten ahead of it is naive, because I couldn't have necessarily. I could have stopped the train sooner on the track and said, wait, hang on. I talked to a totally different type of writer and author and cleared this all right up. I didn't, because I was away for 3 days and I was off social media for the vast majority. I was definitely off Threads, but I was off most of my social media. I was writing and I was visiting 2 of my kids who are away at college, and we got completely snowed in. So we barely even had Wi-Fi. So by the time that I found out that this was happening, to say it was too late is the understatement of the year. It wasn't like I had dropped 10 feet into a hole and I could pull myself back out. I had dropped to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Like, it was almost like I looked up at the top of the Grand Canyon and thought, I have other things to do. I don't know how to extricate myself from this. I did try. It did not go well because, again, I was talking to completely the wrong audience. Now, while this wasn't a fun experience, as I tell other people who are writing this sort of nonfiction and also memoir, I do not believe in the cliche, everything happens for a reason. That's just me. If you believe in it, that's fantastic. Everyone has a right to believe what they believe. I don't believe in that. For me, I believe that really unfortunate things happen to us in life as human beings. And when they happen, or after they happen, or a decade after they happen, we have the opportunity to choose to use them for our good. In other words, for our growth. So I can't control how anybody else sees a situation, which is why I'm not going to get deep into it, because I'm not here to call out the person who reshared it or how anybody in that space responded. I don't know what the intention was of the person who either advertently, or I like to think inadvertently, threw me into this other arena without my permission and without giving me a chance. There are a lot of different ways this could have been handled, but it is what it is. And we all can go back in hindsight and say, maybe I should have handled that differently. And perhaps this person thinks the same thing. I don't know. Again, I like to think that this person is maybe thinking, maybe I won't do that again. Maybe that went awry. But regardless, I've had a number of conversations with people over the last several days and had an opportunity to really think through, okay, so this wasn't fun, but how can I utilize this for my own growth? And how can I utilize this to speak to other authors and aspiring authors in this space, or in whatever space of writing where this resonates, not as this is what you must do, or even this is what you should do, but here's an experience, again, because this is what we are all in this space writing from. This is an experience that I had. This is how I navigated it. If you end up in a similar experience and some of these tactics work for you, amazing. If they don't, also fine. Like, if you can take one thing from this and put it into your toolbox of management as a public person, even though you're not maybe Oprah, but once you've written a book or put your stuff out there into the public, these things can happen, again, without your realizing it. And one of the things that I do talk to authors about a lot is that you don't have any control. Oftentimes authors are as afraid of success as they are of failure, because you don't know what it looks like. So if you're a very introverted person, if you like your privacy, and all of a sudden you write a book that you love writing, in any genre for that matter, and it gets picked up by someone big, or it gets mentioned in a big media outlet, and then there's a lot of attention on you, how are you going to navigate that? And it happens more often that it happens and the person is not prepared for it and doesn't know how to handle it. And it can be really jarring. So I wanted to provide you with, I've got 8 lessons that I learned from this experience. Number 1, and this is really an industry lesson that I learned. The fiction world and the nonfiction world are quite different. That probably isn't terribly surprising. But on the industry side, they're more different than I even realized. I have a lot of friends who write fiction, and they're I love them. I absolutely love them. So for some reason, I was kind of thinking, and we've had many of them have been on this podcast, and we've had very open dialogue where maybe we have different experiences, we have different perspectives, but we're able to ask each other questions. We respect each other's experience. We respect each other's choices, and on we go. And I did neglect to remember for a hot second that that's not always the case. Sometimes people are very rooted in their position to the point that they don't even want to ask you questions about your position. They're just going to go make assumptions about who you are and how you move through the world and then blast those out as though it's this virtue signaling thing where it's like, I'm saving all of you from this person. But sadly, in some cases, what you're saying is, I'm saving you from a nice person. And I'm not saying that I think I am, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in some cases, people are doing that to be for valor and for virtue, but they don't have enough information to do that. And at the end of the day, I'm 5'3", barely. But if somebody out there became hellbent convinced that I was 6 feet tall, they could absolutely find something, some old photo or something I said where they could just focus on that one thing and try to convince everyone around them that I'm 6 feet tall. And I'm definitely not. So I was called a lot of names. It was hurtful. And I'm kind of reminded a little bit, I'll just say this really quick. Julia Roberts, if you happen to see, there's a reel going around that Julia Roberts made. She had an overnight with her niece, Emma Roberts, and the next morning they were having tea and playing cards, and Emma took a photo of them and posted it to her social media saying, something along the lines of like, a great time with my aunt or whatever. And the comment section was insane because the comment sections are usually unhinged. And a lot of people were chastising Julia for looking old and not aging well and looking like a man. And then further, the comments within the comments. So the arguments that were taking place within the comments where some people were defending Julia and then other people were attacking the people who were defending Julia. It just became crazy. So Julia made this reel where she said, and I quote, "I am a 50-year-old woman and I know who I am, and yet my feelings were hurt. What if I was 15? And she went on to say, and I'm paraphrasing this part, but just about the reality of the social media landscape today, and that this is truly what 15, 16, 17, early 20-year-olds are having to navigate and deal with. And it's horrific, which is an entirely different conversation. But I knew for a brief moment there how Julia felt, because I absolutely know who I am as a human being, as a writer, as a professional. And yet some of these comments really hurt. It does not feel good to be called something that you are absolutely not. In my case, to be called a predator, to be called a fraud. I mean, it was just, one I hadn't heard before was a grifter. Like the number of people who called me a grifter, I was like, hang on, what the hell is a grifter? Like, I don't even know what that is. But it was next level. I don't think it's good. It was next level. One of the things I came to understand quickly, this is lesson number 1, and this is for me and it's for any other, it's industry. It's an industry lesson. There are all these different terms that we have in writing, whether you're writing fiction, nonfiction, it doesn't matter. There are a bunch of different terms. And one of the terms is hybrid publisher. Or within the fiction community, many people just say hybrid. They don't say a hybrid publisher, they just say a hybrid. Within the fiction community, and this is not across the board, this is a generalization, but I think it's true more often than not, and more often than in the nonfiction community. A hybrid author, it's a hybrid author. It's not a hybrid publisher. So a hybrid, just as a singular word, is used to describe an author who has published both traditionally and indie. In the nonfiction space, specifically when people are writing about business, self-development, personal growth, spirituality, and that sort of thing, we hear the term hybrid publisher. And a hybrid publisher in that case can also be called an author-financed model. So it is a model or a publishing service. So in the fiction space, because so many fiction writers are quite focused on craft, a publisher, if you use the word publisher, you are talking about someone who operates under a traditional publishing model, meaning they either pay you in advance plus royalties, or in many cases now, there's no upfront advance, but there's a fairer split on royalties than there is typically with the big traditional publishing houses. There are also situations where authors don't want to wait on a traditional publisher, have different goals, don't like that model, etc., and they don't want to do the work themselves. They want to self-publish, they want full control, but they don't have the time, energy, or desire to figure it all out. For the record, you can absolutely figure it all out on Google. It will take time usually, and there's a lot, more than ever, of conflicting information. So sometimes people are like, I don't have time for this overwhelm and this crazy. Somebody who knows what they're doing, can you package this properly for me so that it sits well next to any traditionally published book? Okay, that is referred to in a bunch of different ways. Author financed, hybrid published, indie published, or using a publishing service, professional publishing package type of a thing. The big difference with that and what everyone gets on, including myself, which is called vanity publishing, is that vanity publishers, which I never recommend, there's no vetting. They are typically a lot of them don't even know the industry at all. They've never written books. Nobody in their company has written books. They'll publish anything that comes across their desk. They charge incredibly high prices the price isn't the issue necessarily. The issue is that they're charging for things that they can't fulfill on. So they'll say things like, we're going to do all your marketing for you, when what they mean is we're going to send out a press release, which doesn't do anything. Or they'll say, we're going to build your website, which what they mean is we're going to give you a page on our website, which has little to no traffic, so that's not going to do anything. And these aspiring authors don't know. It's not their fault. They don't know to ask what questions to ask, which is why I have a whole list. It's on my blog. It's free. It's also in Write the Damn Book Already, the book, if you have a copy of that, of the questions to ask your publishing service. If you're not sure if they're hybrid or vanity, to ask them to make absolutely sure that you're getting the end result, the product that you desire, and aren't disappointed on the back end. So I think we're all in agreement across the fiction, nonfiction world that the vanity publishers, that it's a no-go. It's a no-go. But the word hybrid gets people's hackles up because they're not always speaking the same language. They're saying the same word, but they're not speaking the same language. So that's something I learned, and I'm grateful for it because now I know to temper my language and also qualify from where I'm coming when I say these things in 500 characters or less properly. It's not always easy. And if someone wants to take you out of context, they can. I mean, there's just no way around that, which is another lesson coming up. Lesson number 2, people will undoubtedly label you. And it's not a good idea when that happens, please trust me on this, to try to defend yourself. I had the most wonderful conversation with my good friend, Drew Linsalata. Actually, I think we were on the phone for nearly 4 hours in total yesterday talking this through because I was truly trying to understand where this had all gone off the track and not only how to, I don't know if you can avoid it, but how do I handle it better next time? And I handled it pretty well, but so that my own mental health is protected. Because again, I know who I am. I know what I'm doing in this space. I'm not worried about that at all. But also to help my friends and the people with whom I work who are saying like, I'm a little afraid to write this because what if it's misinterpreted, which is something we talk about quite a bit. So people will misinterpret. People may, as a result, label you. People will almost surely write a bad review at some point. Once your book reaches enough people, and that could be 13, somebody will write a bad review. Their reasons for doing it will not always be known, as we recently found out with the Goodreads debacle of 2023. It's rarely about you. It's not a good idea. We've been saying for years, if someone writes a bad review on Amazon, do not respond. We've been saying that for years. Do not respond. Do not defend yourself. Amazon doesn't like it when you do that. It's just, it doesn't look good, the whole thing. Like, stand by. If someone calls you out on something, and this is a caveat, where you've said something not realizing that perhaps it was, came across as offensive in a way that when it is, when someone tells you, hopefully in a compassionate way, hey, I don't know if you know this, but this is offensive. And you can say, oh God, I did not know that. Thank you. And then rephrase or whatever you need to do. There's a story that I always remember about Brené Brown, who was speaking on stage years and years ago. She used the term gypped, Gypped, as in like, I felt gypped. And after the presentation, someone approached her and said, listen, I know you wouldn't do this on purpose, but I want to let you know, as a member of a specific community, that term is really offensive to my community. And Brené was like, oh my God, like I had no idea. It's just been a word that, like so many other words we use, and we don't often think about where they came from, what the implication is. And so that was a teaching moment, a learning moment for her. And she shared that with her audience in order to say, hey, look, I just learned this today. So if someone comes in a review, and usually, by the way, though, those things won't come through a public review. They'll message you. If they're a kind, compassionate person who just wants you to maybe hear them, they'll DM you, they'll email you, they'll do something. They won't be out trying to tarnish your reputation by painting you as being a certain thing. So it's not, once a person or a group of people have decided unequivocally that you are fill in the blank and it's a negative thing, you're not going to change their mind. There's no point in taking your energy and trying to change their mind or trying to convince them that you aren't that. So I now just accept that for a percentage of people, for a certain number of people over in the Threads community, that is what I am. That to them, that is what I am. And I won't say I'm okay with it, but I've accepted it and we're moving on because I know that I am not that. Lesson number 3 is there are absolutely some incredibly good, kind, compassionate, supportive people in this space. I was told at one point not long ago that the book space is one of the nastiest places that you can be. And I was so shocked because I've had such an incredible experience. I mean, I don't like being in nasty places. So if it had been really awful and toxic I've been doing this for 20 years and I've been doing it full time for about 6, I wouldn't be in it because I don't like that kind of a space. But I hadn't ever had that kind of experience. I have met some of the most supportive, compassionate, kind, generous people in this space. Nonfiction writers, fiction writers, poets, comic strip writer. I mean, the gamut, like illustrators, editors, everybody here, agents. I've had some really lovely experiences. I'm coming now to understand that there are pockets, as there are in every industry, where people are, it's not good. So please know that there are good and kind people and just find them. There were a handful of people who I don't even know who in the midst of this, were defending me for threads and threads and threads and threads and threads saying, guys, like, go look at what she does. This is clearly being taken out of context. And again, the recipients did not want to hear that. They were married to their opinion and we were going to hear it. I also had a couple of people reach out via email, and even again, a couple, like two perfect strangers reach out to me over DM on Instagram and just say, "Oh my God, I just saw this happening. Like, are you okay?" And I'll dismiss the however many people said unkind things and labeled me in an unkind way for that all day, because that to me is humanity. That's compassion. And that's what the power of words, that's the power of words. And that's why I'm in this space to begin with, because words can connect or words can divide. And I like to think that most of the people in the author space are here because we want our words to connect. We want them to entertain. We want them to transform. We want them to open people's minds. We want to compel people to think about something a little bit differently, not to prove that we're right, but just to say, have you considered this perspective? Because I personally love it when people say, Liz, have you considered this perspective? And then if I say, yep, I'm considering it and I don't like it, and they can say, okay, moving on. Like, to me, that is what the world needs more of. And in any community that you're in, as human beings, I believe we have two basic fundamental needs. And those are to be, beyond Maslow's theory, those are to be heard and to be right. And I think there's nowhere that we see that play out more aggressively than in the comments on social media. So find the kind people. They're out there, I promise. Just when you think I have been piled on by billions, right? You can just go find 10 people who you enjoy and get back to that. Just get back to that. Lesson number 4 is sort of a take on, it's a 3B, if you will. Have a tribe that checks you on yourself and let things settle with them first before figuring this all out. So if I had made a podcast about this when I was in the midst of it, it wouldn't have been good. I would have been calling people out. I would have been defending myself. Like, it wouldn't have been good. So to let everything settle and to have people around you implicitly trust. And for me, I have about 4 people who I know, because they've done it, will absolutely say, Liz, you stepped in it. We got to do something. Like, you made a mistake. They've said that to me before in life. And they say it with compassion. And when they say it, I trust them. So on the flip side, if I say, oh my gosh, where did I go wrong here? And they say, you didn't. This is just an example. You just got thrown into something and there was no coming, like, you are a goldfish that got thrown into sharks and then somebody threw chum in the water, right? I trust them on that too. So have your people who you trust and can call and say, gosh, somebody just wrote this review, or my beta reader just said this, is this, or this is how I'm feeling about something. Help me. Can we talk through this? Because when all is said and done, all you can control is you and how you grow through your understanding of what has happened and why it has triggered you. Because if I didn't care at all, none of this would have affected me in the least. So I do care. It's not that I care what people think. It's that, as Julia Roberts said, no matter how much you know who you are and what your intention is in life, that's not what she said. I'm adding that on. It hurts when someone says some terribly unkind things about how you look, who you are, etc. Lesson number 5. This is really something big time I took out of it. I'm not even saying you should do this. These are my lessons, to be clear. You can take them as advice if you'd like. These are my lessons, and I'm putting them out there. And if someone wants to say, ooh, that makes sense to me, then grab it and run with it. If it doesn't make sense to you, my God, leave it right here. But number 5 is to keep learning, first of all, and be more cognizant of semantics and context. It is difficult to express a full thought, especially if there are nuances in 500 characters or 140 characters or even 1,500 characters sometimes on Instagram, if all someone's looking at is the original post and the post is meant to be intriguing, but then they're taking you at that post and not reading the fine print below. Always read the fine print, people. But when you're posting, whether you think you're posting to one person or a million people, just put thought into it. Now, that doesn't mean overthink it, but in this instance, I can see where I could have phrased this differently had I known what group I was being thrown into. Of course, I didn't know that, but across the board, words matter. So that's why beta readers, it's one of the reasons why beta readers and editors are so important, because they can say to you, listen, I don't think you meant it this way, but knowing you or knowing what your intention is, you might want to consider rephrasing this, because if it's not necessary to say it in exactly this way, you might not want to invite the conflict that could arise as a result. Lesson number 6, you are allowed to make honest mistakes. We are human. People make honest mistakes every day. Of course, if you go out there and egregiously and intentionally say something hateful, you're going to get called on it. And I'm not going to be over here feeling like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to them. If it's your intention. More often than not, people are making honest mistakes. And what's happening is we're not letting people learn as they go. So in the Brene Brown example, imagine if that person had chosen to post that on social media instead of just compassionately approaching Brene and saying something. Everyone would have gone bonkers after Brene Brown. It's happened before on other matters. And it's not civilized. Forget fair. It's not civilized. And in the instance of what happened with me over on Threads, I'm interested, we'll never know, but I'm just interested in what would have happened if the post had been, instead of being, arguing my point and sort of, whether meaning to or not, inviting a pile on, what if the post had just been, hey, Elizabeth, how do you feel about this when it comes to fiction? Or, hey, Elizabeth, are you speaking about fiction because I write about dragons, and are you saying that I should be a dragon in real life in order to write about dragons? Like, it doesn't even make logical sense, but just imagine how that might have played out differently. Unfortunately, it might not have played out terribly differently because I wouldn't have replied within 7 minutes because, again, I was where I was. But there's a difference between discussion and division. And there's a difference between an opinion, sharing your opinion or your experience, and sharing facts like assumptions and blanket facts and rules and across the board stuff. And one thing that I pray I've made abundantly clear is that there is no one way in anything. There is no one right in anything. There's only what's right for you. I mean, people who do very, very bad things think in many cases that they're justified in doing it. To them, they've done the right thing. You're never going to convince them that they haven't done the right thing. But where you get the most sense of peace, I think, is saying, that's not right for me. So there are words I don't even use. I don't use the words should. I don't even use the words have to. So when people come to me and they say, well, do I have to be on TikTok? No. Do I have to have a launch party? No. Do I have to have an email list? No. Now, on the flip side, if you're not going to do anything, right, you can't come back to me or anyone else later and say, the book isn't selling. But you don't have to do anything. The only thing you have to do is recognize that there is I don't want to say a consequence, there's a result of what you do or don't do. Okay, lesson 7. There are actually only 7 because 8 was actually the Julia Roberts thing. And I said that at the very beginning. So final lesson is no one person can make or break anyone long term. And the reason I say this is because I was pretty surprised by the number of people who retweeted this mess, right? To just get in on the train. And most of them, are authors. And if you look at their bio, they're promoting their stuff. So, okay. And they would say things like, oh my gosh, if this person retweeted me or rethreaded me, is that a thing now? And said this, I would delete all my social media and go into a cave and just die. And that probably made me the saddest of all, because if we put people in a position to say this person has the power to make or break me or my career, we're in trouble. That is a very scary, in my opinion, place to be. I have even told, people will say, as an example, within the inspiration community or whatever, like, how do I get Brene Brown? How do I get Gary Vaynerchuk? How do I get Marie Forleo to endorse my book? And we have a conversation about that. But then what I remind them of, which to me is the most important piece, is even if they do, it's not, you have to sustain that momentum. So they might mention it, and maybe a small percentage of their audience will go check you out, because a small percentage of their audience will see the post, and a small percentage of that audience will care. They'll go check you out. You might sell a few books. That's awesome. But social media is so finite that within 24 hours, that you can't ride that wave anymore. And I absolutely know that from personal experience. I have absolutely had things like that happen, positively and now negatively. And the positive stuff was really fun, and it was exciting, and it was all the things you'd think. And it lasted like 24 hours. And then I had to get back on the horse of continuing to get the word out about whatever I was getting the word out, whether it's my books or when I was designing jewelry or whatever it is. So the idea of, oh my gosh, if this person calls me out, especially if it's for something that you definitely didn't intend, that was a very innocent, what you were trying to be helpful with something, etc., I'm done. Man, that's scary, because I just don't think that any person has that much long-term power. I think that they have power for a day or two, and you can rally the troops if they want to for a day or two. But there are so many instances, and I will not get into them, of scenarios where someone has used their influence in a very negative way to rally people, and that lasted, it wasn't good, but it lasts a day or two. And then we come back. It's like everything else, because our attention spans are that small. So if someone celebrates you wildly, if Ellen DeGeneres or Marie Forleo or Mindy Kaling or Emily Henry or Neely Alexander, because I have to get her name in just about every episode when I can, not even when I can, it's just, it has to happen, post something and says, this book is incredible and amazing, and you're like, oh my God, I've made it. I have made it. Please know that within 24 hours, you're going to be back in the same place you probably were the day before. Are there exceptions to that? Sure. But you don't have to look much further than American Idol, America's Got Talent, The Voice, any kind of a show like that where people gain momentary, international notoriety. And fast forward a few months, and it's like there are actual articles on the internet and in magazines called Where Are They Now? Because it's like, where are they now? Whether it's actors, the whole thing. So to me, again, as long as you are being you and you have good intentions, all of this is navigable, but there does come with the author space and any space like this, the fact that there needs to be, and this is where I might say there has to, I might actually intentionally use those words here, an acceptance that you are opening yourself up to people's interpretation of your words and of your intent. Assumptions can and very well likely may be made about your intention and about you. And that doesn't matter the genre in which you're writing. So in short, just be kind. I have loved almost every minute in this community, and I have no intention of leaving it anytime soon. Books are life. Words are life. Genuine connection with people and learning and growing and evolving as a result of reading their perspectives and reading the stories that they write. Fiction too. I grow every single day. I don't know that I'm any more grateful for any other thing, obviously besides my children, than I am for the people who are brave enough and courageous enough to put their words and their stories and their experiences out into the world to share them with other people. It is, no pun intended, the thread that ties so much of my life and my growth together. And I am forever grateful for everyone who I've encountered in this space, including the last few days. I truly am, because all of it leads to, for me, how can I grow from this? How can I better understand myself? How can I better see my own triggers and my own tender points? And how can I learn to more effectively practice moving through those so I'm better for me and for the people around me and the people that I come to love, which grows by the day. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope that nobody experiences anything like this, but if you do and you need someone to reach, I'm here. You can DM me. I will hold your hand. I will remind you that you are not alone. We will talk it through. We will find a solution that feels really, really good to you. And that's a free service from me to just you, because I really feel like we just have to do better. So I hope this was helpful. I will see you again next week. Just keep writing. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, this is your friendly reminder to follow or subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with someone you know has a great story or message, but isn't sure what to do next. Also, remember to check out publishaprofitablebook.com for book writing resources and tips, and to see all the ways we can work together to get your book out into the world. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk with you again soon.